Start on time, finish on time, because we respect your time is our little catchphrase. Ah, there's Nat B. Legendary. Hello. Nice to see you. Just a little drop in the message. I'll just welcome people as they come in. So I'll start with a bit of preamble and a bit of introduction. For those who know me, this might be a bit of a recap, but you can read all the messages while you go and put some funky comments in there. But I'm going to present today from Bob. So Bob is our coaching program that we run. It's also our community of entrepreneurs, as I like to call them, corporate escapees, who choose to start and scale their own business. And many people here, probably have a portfolio career. They might work for somebody. They might do some consulting. They might sit on boards. They might have a few investments and ventures that they do. We love a varied career base now, rather than be reliant on just one income source. So that's going to be my perspective, my lens to talk through this presentation. I delivered this presentation to another business group. They invited me onto their platform and they resonated with the messaging. So I thought I'd just roll it out for my Bob clients, but also for the people who are in our social star community. And I'll explain how that fits in a bit later on. What I want to do specifically today is to talk about content. How do we do content? Where we do content? What's going to stand out? What I find is working. I have a perspective. I deal with lots of clients. We produce content, all day, every day. So I have, evidence, results, and experience. However, so do you. And so I'm very keen to hear people's feedback from whether you're an intern like Joe, someone who works for me, or the more mature candidates in the room who have been around and seen lots of ups and downs in the market and changes in technology over time. There's some people who hate producing content, who don't like social media. I get a lot of that from my clients. That's why they come to us. But I also get people who are really, involved in it deeply, and they love it and they want to know more. So whatever is your perspective, we're here to communicate and share best practice from what's working with us. Now, to make that relevant, as I said, Bob is for our corporate escapees and normally mature business owners, but also our social star clients, and they're experts. So the way we produce content is actually for experts in the industry, and that's a precursor of going through the social star process. It doesn't work as well if you're not. So I'm going to presume that we all have our expertise, and that's what we're communicating. And the methodology we have that I'm going to present, and sort of the exact steps of what we do for our clients, is based on that. And I'll explain why that is and how we do it. And if you're not like that, so if you're an intern and you're, upskilling, what else you could do in that case. So I'll present a few different varieties, but our methodology is based on experts marketing themselves, whether it's their entire business, such as someone who owns a larger business, but they're the brand leader, or whether it's, you're a solopreneur. It doesn't really matter. It's all the same type of methodology. All right. So those who don't know me quite as well, let me give you some background. This will be relevant for our discussion and why I got into this industry. So I started off my family business, but then I quickly went to corporate. So after I worked at my grandfather's office products business selling stationery, which is very exciting. I went to corporate and started my career at Hewlett-Packard, which back in the day was the Apple of the time. So we were the biggest computer company in the world. 50% of global sales of computers were us. Apple was 2% at the time. So that's hard to believe, but they were in the wilderness back then, before they brought out the iPhone. And I also worked at other companies like Census, IBM, mostly tech companies. So I was sort of exposed to technology very early on. I got involved in social media at the very outset. I was doing MySpace campaigns before, Instagram was even, thought of. And so I've just ridden that digital trend throughout my career. I was telling someone the other day that my first website that I ever built, I did through my marketing agency, and it cost $250,000. Of which today I could probably do on Squarespace. Probably like the Apollo versus the current moon project, where my iPhone's more powerful than what they had in the Apollo moon landing, and yet they still managed to get it done. The good news about that website is it made $1 million in the first year of cash. So that was still considered successful for the time. And that was at Census. That was actually selling in-car navigation maps. So if you've ever used maps on your phone, before they're on your phone, they're in your car. And we used to sell the maps, which were about $2 to $5 grand. Brad Garn Smith would remember this from probably having maps. No, you don't have maps in your Mercedes? Kidding me. Surely there's a disc that goes in there somewhere, or a USB drive or something. I've done a few startups. Social Star was my first one, which is my main business. Campus Life is my social enterprise where I help students get their first role in their career, and that's it's my version 2 of that happening right now. We've got some of our students here, and Tribe was one of the businesses, and I put it in there because it's the only one I sold for profit. Some of them went broke. There was plenty of them. I had a go at inventing Apple AirTags 20 years ago, well before the technology was around to actually do that. I had a lot of goes that did a lot of different things that sort of fizzled out. But Tribe was an influencer marketplace, so it's still going. It's I partnered with Jules Lund on that and managed to exit fairly early for what I consider a reasonable price. And so that was a good success case in entrepreneurship. Wasn't really my vibe when I got to start it. I didn't really like influencers. I wanted to be an influencer on LinkedIn, and I was actually at the time influencer in Twitter and LinkedIn, and Instagram was coming up, and it all became a little bit too look at me than content. So I exited out of that. And education, I've done a lot of education. I've done 3 degrees, ended up with a Master of Entrepreneurship from Swinburne, but I also teach. And so I got a high value on education. And so I really enjoy the education environment. I've taught for 15 years at universities all around Australia. Having a break right now because Pearly, one of my staff, has taken over my slot. But I'm considering going back because I enjoy that. I'm mentoring and I love to teach. So that's a bit of context so that you can get a lens of why I do what I do. And I think the why story is really important. So the reason we're here now, if you're here and, for those people who registered for the recording, we love you just as much, such as my friends in America who didn't realize that it was actually Australian time. I want to read some of these stats because the world is changing, and we know, and it's affecting a lot of our clients pretty significantly. And just in the last couple of months, it's actually changed quite dramatically, and I want to share a case study on that. So one stat, 70% of companies report that standing on the market is harder than it was 5 years ago. Now, you'd think with all the social media sites, with AI, with Canva, with all of these cool tools, it'd be easier. But what the problem is when everyone has access to the same tools, it becomes more competitive. So it's harder to stand out because there's more people producing content. It's easier to produce. They produce it more volume. So the world is just noisier. So, that's a real challenge. The 72% of small businesses saying operational costs are increasing. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. Who runs a business, every business owner I have dinner and lunch with basically talk about that. I think my costs have gone up probably about 80% in the last 3 years, as has pretty much everyone else's. So we've got to find ways of being more efficient. And what a lot of people are doing is they're leaning into AI, which is the topic of the discussion. They may not be doing things as discerningly as they would like. And what's happening is that, particularly in content production, a lot of people are just doing generic things that are not quite really cutting through. I got one of my clients. We were in the middle of producing content, but he's sort of in a hurry, so we put out a blog that was literally, ChatGPT with all the lines and almost the prompts in there. It was so obvious, and it just had no reaction, and it looked bad. Like it just made him, it damaged his brand more than it actually helped with the time saving. And this is the paradigm we're in. Like you've got these amazing tools, but how do you use them when the platforms don't want you to use them? So social media platforms downgrade the reach of AI generated content because they want you to create good content. But then what do? Do you not use it and write organically? But then, you're not using the speed of the tool. So how do you do that? So I'll share what we do, which might help people here. Catalina, how are you? Nice to see you again. Haven't seen you for a long time. And the last stat, or the second last stat, is 25% of consumers are less likely to support a brand they feel is generic. And this gets down to the, our philosophy is that less is more. Being specific and niche and hyper niche is far, far, far more compelling than being generic. And what people tend to do when they want more clients, they go, oh, I've got to open up to everybody. And I'm like, no, the opposite. Bring it down and become more specialized, more specific, less available, more of a destination rather than, oh, please come and see me. And so we put more barriers in place in our client journey rather than less. And again, I'll explain how we do that. But I think that's a really important point. I think people, they struggle to accept that, even if they can intellectually understand, they struggle to actually implement that because it's hard. It's hard to say no to people. It's hard to really understand what you really want to do and what you don't want to do. And like I said, we work with experts in their industry. And if you're not an expert in your industry, this is not going to work for you. Our content management system, is predicated on that one fact. And we've gone with clients who are not, and guess what? It doesn't work. So they're our niche. It doesn't mean this content plan doesn't work for other people. It just means for our social star clients, that's how it works. And the last stat is that growth is slowing down, economic issues. We all know about that, don't need to harp on that point. But what do we do to get growth? And I'm going to tell you one thing that has been really working for our clients lately. And I think it's actually a bit of a game changer. And we've only just learned this in the last couple of months. So it's kind of cool. All right. So even though things are challenging, doesn't mean that we can't stand out if you just follow some good principles. I actually think it's a great time to start a business, to be honest. If you do it well, there's so little barriers to entry. And the costs can come down, but you've got to know what to outsource and what to automate and what not to. And I've been guilty of outsourcing the wrong things in my history. And I've learned a lot from my clients. When you're dealing with dozens and dozens of the same people, you get to really learn what works and what doesn't. And I'll share when we go through the sales funnel where we should outsource and where we should not. All right, now this is our sort of avatar, not this particular person. So this is Paul that I just mentioned before. This is him. So I've had less referrals and inbound leads that it takes more effort now to get the same result than a couple of years ago. That's obviously not Paul, that's a joke. Essentially, this is the common complaint we get. And I literally just came from a meeting in the city with a new client, and we were talking about this very point. She doesn't want to promote herself on LinkedIn because she seems it feels cheap and sort of needy. She wants people to come to her. And and she's, kind of similar vintage than me, a few years older. And I said that a lot of my clients are finding this, and it's not just that social media is a noisy place and it's hard to stand out. It's actually that her partners, so the people she knows, are retiring. They're leaving the industry. They're, not working in the same areas, so they're not in charge of big companies. They may be doing a portfolio career. So her network is degrading. It's getting smaller, and we might find that your network doesn't stay static. It doesn't always stay the same, and so we need to get new people. Now, how do we get those people if we can't get great content out there and start that funnel happening? So we do need to think a bit broadly about where our referrals are going to come from, because the referrals are the lifeblood of any services business. If you're an expert, you want referrals. They're the best business. They're the ones that convert for the lowest cost. They're the most loyal. It's just all around goodness. And there's I see a lot of other marketing people talk on social media saying you don't want referrals, you want a systematic lead generation system. And I go, yeah, you do, but that systematic lead generation should generate referrals because cold traffic is harder to convert, more expensive, less loyal, and generally not as good fit for your values. And I'll explain that again in the when I go through the e-traction sales funnel. So how do we get more referrals, and how do we systemize the getting of them so that it's not random, it's planned? That's the goal. All right, so this is all predicated on this philosophy I have called e-traction. E stands for digital and traction is attraction. So the philosophy is, how do we bring clients to us? We're the destination rather than we go and chase clients down the road. And that's what this lady was talking about. She doesn't want to seem like she's needy and chasing people down the road. She wants to be a queue of people lined out outside her restaurant rather than the one where there's nobody inside and the spruikers outside trying to pull you in, right? It's an energetic difference, and it makes a massive difference when you're doing sales, because if someone's coming to you, right, you're now a price giver. If you're going to them, you're now a price taker, because if you're going to them, they go, well, I don't need you, and I probably will go look at other people. If they're coming to you specifically and for your brand, not just for your service, for your brand, you're in the driver's seat, okay? Because they have come to you, it gives you a power and it gives you a brand advantage. So that's why we want to create this system of referrals. And push marketing is sort of the opposite of what we do. We do pull marketing. Push marketing is things like meta ads, so Instagram and Facebook ads, doing things like LinkedIn outreach, which we do, but it's how you do it. So I don't know if anyone's ever had a random LinkedIn message with someone offering you a service that has nothing to do with what you do. I probably get 10 a day. That's what I call push. Pull is going to someone who is already in your network and offering something of value, like a webinar, an ebook, something that's thoughtfully designed, personally curated. I don't consider that pushy, I consider that pull. Because you do want to tell people what you do, but you want to be helpful rather than salesy. And that's kind of the e-traction vibe we're trying to get to. All right, so is right. Glad you asked. It's the power of the brand. So is the way to profitability. And if you look at all of these logos on the screen, if you don't know them, just let me know, I'll tell you what that. So these brands are price givers. Apple doesn't let you negotiate on the latest iPhone. They'll charge you whatever they feel like it. I think the last one was $2,500. If you own a Porsche, does anyone own a Porsche? I don't know if anyone does. I don't own a Porsche, but my friend just bought one. He said it was the best experience of his life. He used to own Mercedes, and he said he's a Porsche customer for life, even though the car cost him $250,000, thanks very much. And they wouldn't even let him buy a new one. He hasn't earned the right to buy a new car. He has to buy a second-hand one in order to build up his reputation in the company, in order to go in and buy a new one and have the privilege of buying a new one. Louis Vuitton's got a similar thing. There's Birkin bags. There's lots of different examples. In fact, Tesla's probably isn't quite in the realm of this now I think about it. But essentially, people who are price givers have earned the right because they've built a brand and reputation. I mean, these are just logos. Logos aren't your brand. It's what people think and feel about you in the marketplace. It's your reputation. So, if I put your name in front of, 100 people that you knew from university, school, previous work experience, etc., what would they say? Would they know exactly what you do? Would they be able to pitch you to one of their friends? Because if they don't and they can't, you won't get the referral, because they don't really understand. They're not clear on your brand, what you stand for. They might like you, and that's great, but if there's not that clarity of brand proposition because you haven't told them, and that takes repetition, that consistency and longevity, then you're not going to get the referrals. So what we find with all of these companies are they're extremely profitable. And if I use an example, let's just say, Tesla, for example. Now, I've got Porsche up there because it's an extremely valuable brand, but unfortunately, it's not as valuable as Tesla. Tesla's the most valuable car brand in the world by none, like by a long shot, by a mile. Even though they don't make as many cars, and even though they don't make as much money, the value of the stock is more valuable than the other brands, than Porsche. Now, if I asked you who the owner or the leader of Tesla was, I'm sure you could probably answer it. Now, you might like that person, you might hate that person. I don't really mind, but you know who that person is. But if I said who is the managing director or the CEO of Porsche, could anyone answer the question? What about Steve Jobs? Anyone heard of Steve Jobs? I'm sure people have heard of Steve Jobs. Who runs Samsung? I don't know. As so and so. And, Louis Vuitton is owned by one big group. He's a very well-known business owner. And, but I could name other brands where you wouldn't know who that is. And that's in the luxury market now. To be honest, I'm not really in the luxury market, so, but I do know the history of the brand. So point being is, it's not just about products. It's about three things in a business. And there's a personal brand in every business. Every business has a personal brand of some description. There's a business brand, which is the business website, the terms and conditions. It's, could be the store, could be, how you go to market, your corporate reputation, things like B Corp certified, all those things make up your business, your reviews. And then there's products. Now, products are what people exchange for money, right? And in a service type industry, you are packaging your service as a product. So I'm just going to use the omni word of product when I talk about services or products. And we specialize in creating services into products. So for instance, we have Expert Marketing System, which is our content management product. So that's a name, that's a system for a defined price, for a defined set of people, and that's a product. Whereas if I said, we do content, so does everybody else. I could throw a stone into 5 people who do content in Collingwood. So we have to distinguish our services to be remarkable by themselves. And by doing that, then we can separate them from the competition and start creating barriers of entry that make us more valuable. And as Mr. Paul Dunn knows all about branding. And then you've got the business. So the business is then, as I said before, that's the business website, that's the name, that's a reputation, how long have you been around for, et cetera, et cetera. Now, most companies just have a business and a product. So Samsung has the Samsung Corporation. What do you think about them? Are they good quality? Are they highly technical? What are they compared to the Oppo Corporation? What are they compared to any other phone brand? And the products, and people normally assess them based on the product, the camera specs, the memory, the battery, the screen, the packaging, etc. But what about the people? Where's the people come into it? Now, I'm a big believer that the people matter as much as the others. And people might argue with that and go, well, it's all about the products at the end of the day. That's what people are getting. But it's not, because human psychology is very complicated. And all the research points to the fact that people make decisions with their feelings and their gut instincts and their subconscious, and then rationalize them through logic. Doesn't mean logic doesn't have a place, and the price and what you get for your price matters, but the experience shows that people make weird and wonderful purchase decisions and justify them a lot. And as my lovely girlfriend would say, that her handbags, of which she has many Louis Vuitton and Chanel and so forth, probably about 12 bags, because you need 12, are an investment. And argue with me that these things, and actually they actually are. I couldn't believe it when I learned more about it. The point being is, she wants them, so she'll justify them. And I might go, that's ridiculous. But then I look at the things I buy that I really like, and I'll justify those because that's what I want to spend my money on. And everybody has something in their life that they do it. Could be fine wine, could be whiskey, could be food, could be home renovations, could be clothes, could be whatever it is for you, right? Now, that means that we're buying an emotion and justifying logically. Now, I did sales in large corporations for 15 years, and I know that this was true even in that. People that I used to sell to, would buy based on whether my product or service and organization will help them pursue their career and help them get ahead, regardless of whether it's the best thing for the company, right? And they would look in my eyes and go, do I trust Andrew to deliver that for me? I could have all the contracts in the world, but when they're face to face with somebody, they have to have trust. And I've seen many deals shift back and forth depending on that trust equation. So in every business, we have these 3 parts. That's just how much each one of them is useful to form trust with your client. Because anyone who's in sales, a lot of people here do sales. You know that the essence of everything in sales is trust, right? If they don't like you and they don't trust you good at what you do, you just won't get the deal. Doesn't matter what the price is, doesn't matter how good the company is, et cetera, et cetera. Now, obviously different businesses have different parameters. So if you're in an e-commerce business selling a commodity good, your product probably is one of the most important things, and your business is probably second, and the people are less important. But we're not selling commodities, we're selling people. I'm just in the process of changing one of my professional services. And I want to meet the person. That's my job. I want to go out and talk to the person who is going to be doing my work, because I want to see face to face and I want to talk to them. That's my clock calling me. Hi, Roz. You're probably looking for the link to the webinar. So let me just get rid of that. This is the percentage that I've come up with for professional services. So this is for service-based businesses, of what we think you should allocate in investment in content and marketing to your brand. So let me explain. When you first start a business, your brand matters more than anything else. And that's kind of obvious when I explain it, because if you've just launched your business 6 months ago or a year and you haven't had many clients and you haven't sold many products, well, how do I form trust? I form trust based on your background, your experience, your reputation, your reviews on things like LinkedIn. Because you don't have 100 reviews on Google and you haven't sold 1,000 products. You haven't delivered it in scale. So therefore, the only way someone can build trust with you is through you. And so therefore, when I get a new corporate escapee who's used to being, behind the scenes in a corporate entity, and they're like, I don't want to put myself out there, I go, you're going to struggle, because no one's heard of your company and you've never delivered a product. How are you going to sell the first one? Right? What they're going to do is look at LinkedIn and go, what have you done in the past? Who do you know? Right? And all of your examples will be from the past, right? So when you first start, you've got to lean into your personal brand. And if that's uncomfortable, then, if you can show me a better way, fantastic. But from my experience, working with hundreds of these corporate escapees, this is the methodology. Once you start growing, and I say, when at this sort of stage where you can back off on your personal brand, you've had 100 clients, okay? 100 clients, of that, you can probably get about 20 or 30 recommendations, maybe more. You'll have, your website will be built out. You'll have more SEO from your website being around long enough. You produce content in the business. You've probably got some team and staff. Your products have been out there and you've started to productize them because you've delivered them on, repeatably, and therefore you can solidify them into a brand, right? My expert marketing system, it's taken me years to produce that. Before we had lots of different elements, but it's only in the last few years that we've really consolidated it into a comprehensive program that we know works, because I've done it dozens and dozens of times. I've got lots of testimonials for it. I've got lots of case studies and stats. That means I've got a product that I can start to do that in. And so I'm more into the sort of grow to exit. I'm sort of in between those two phases. So that's when you can back off your personal brand, lean more into your company brand. Now, the exit is when you're sort of, you've got a very mature business and someone will buy your business because it's not necessarily based on you. And to do that, your company has to be leading. So that means you're still involved. Your brand, I call it a halo, is a halo of the business. So, and people say to me, oh, I don't want to be personally, branding the business because I want to sell it one day. And I'm like, you can still sell it. Richard Branson, Virgin, doesn't own Virgin Australia anymore. Bob Jane T-Mart, not there. Dick Smith, not there. There's lots of examples of people whose, brands. Colonel Sanders, anyone ever heard of him? Ever met him? No. So they still use their face and their brand to promote the business. Now, they're retail examples. They're not suitable for us. But if you think about a lot of businesses, we're working with a logistics business, a global business, we still talk about the original founder in the marketing. It's relevant to the story of the business. The original founder has passed away like a long time ago, but it's relevant to the story of the business. And those stories are critical to the culture, but also to the reputation, right? And all of the businesses, like think about Steve Jobs, hasn't been around for a long, long, long time, yet we still talk about him. We'll still see him on social media on a regular basis, right? He has a halo effect on the business. It doesn't affect the sales of the product. What it does, it affects the overall brand of the business and makes it more desirable. So just think about those percentages. Happy to take feedback. It's a broad outline. It's not a science has to be exactly, but you can see where I'm going and leaning from the personal brand gradually more into the business. Now, the percentage of the products at the exit would change if you are a product business, right? So you can change from a services business to product if that product is automated. And one way to do that is franchising. So there's a guy named Brad Sugars. He started a coaching franchise. And so that coaching franchise is now global. And so that is productizing a service to the point where he's now selling business entities and products, right? But Brad's still around. That's still a reputation. And if he, if that guy, Brad Sugars, has a bad reputation, the company will falter, right? And you've seen the fortunes of Tesla with Elon Musk go up and down based on whatever crazy stuff he's doing today. All right. If you don't know this guy, worth checking out, Simon Sinek. I'm sure most of you would have known who he is. Simon Sinek, I like some of the stuff he does, and he owns the word of why, which is kind of crazy. That's a very generic word, but he's just sort of managed to corner the market into start with why. It's his book, it's his TED Talk. Interestingly enough, if you look at his TED Talk, I don't know if anyone's ever looked at it, just Google it. It's terrible. The filming's terrible. It cuts out in the middle. You know, it's on a small stage. It's got thousands and thousands of views, millions of views probably anyway. And it was so successful because it was such a powerful delivery that it then launched him and he got a book and, you know, did all the rest of it. But essentially, if you don't know what this proposition is in his book, it's people buy why you do something, not just how or what you do. And this is basically the architecture I just talked about, right? The why is you, right? You know, the how is your business. The what is your product, right? There's lots of different products. There's lots of competitive, for every industry, there's a competitor, whether you like to admit it or not. I get people all the time come to me with a genius app or platform idea. They're like, no one's got this. I'm like, yeah, I can just do some Google and find someone who does something similar enough that the public thinks it's the same, and that's all that matters. How you do something can be copied and replicated as well. But your why and your individual person cannot be copied. And that's why, to hammer the point, but that's why having a personal brand is so valuable, because if you're prepared to put yourself out there and have a uniqueness of one person, it can't be replicated. They can try. You know, people have tried to copy Apple. People have tried to copy lots of things. It doesn't mean it's the same. So BYD, great cars out of China. Anyone name the founder? BYD? No. Yet it's still, even though they sell, you know, probably more cars than Tesla now, they're still not as valuable in their market capitalization, right? I bet you Tesla still makes more profit too, right? Because BYD has to sell below, has to have a superior product at a lower price to beat the brand of Tesla. Yeah, that's what branding is. You know, there's far more superior phones than an iPhone, but people don't even question it. Just go out and buy the next one. I do, you know, because I'm lazy. So what is the why? Now, if you don't have to use you, it's just the cheapest form. You could hire George Clooney and sell you coffee, or you could use the CEO. And the CEO, as the founder, is the most easiest and reliable and cheapest way to go to market for this. That's why I recommend that. All right, now, Pearlie just asked for the slides. Pearlie, you'll know this person here. It's one of my clients, Dr. Dan. Now, I put this in here because we just had a remarkable month with him. I hope he doesn't mind me sharing that he had 80 referrals last month. Now, as a specialist in his industry, 80 referrals is a lot. He's now booked out till Christmas. I just spoke to him last week. And the reason he has been successful is, and this is what I really want to hammer home today, is he's been investing in his brand for years, right? Only 5 years, so not forever. He did have a big brand. There's a bit of a kerfuffle. He went completely off market, and then he's back, right? And we've been working with him since then. He's had many iterations of his business. So think about this. There's one brand, Dr. Dan. He used to work at Metro Pain. He had Monash Private Hospital, which is, we did the marketing for them. Then he left there and went and started his own business, right? Which is called Back, Neck and Joint. And now he's just about to start a new business that is coming up. So one person, so Dan's a uniqueness, multiple different businesses, multiple different products underneath that, which I could say would be what he does, but also his team. So now he's employing other doctors, specialist doctors underneath him to deliver the service, because obviously he's booked out to Christmas. He needs to have other people. What we're finding is his team, who are independent to him, but they work collaboratively, they're not investing in the marketing like Dan does. They don't believe, right, that marketing, is a differentiator. Maybe they think they're doctors that shouldn't have to do that. But consequently, one of them, who's new, got 0 referrals last month, and the other one got 12, right? But Dan got 80. Now, it's not because Dan spent a bunch of money last month. Dan has consistently produced content and intellectual, not just boring content, developed his own IP and put that forward into the market in a series of really meaningful ways over the last 5 years, right? The accumulation, the snowball effect of doing personal branding is remarkable. He's the overnight success, right? And this is one of his things. He develops these pain algorithms, right? So his why is to help 1 billion people in the world halve their pain, which is a pretty cool ideology. And he puts his money where his mouth is. So because he has such a big why, people really resonate with him, right? They will go and drive from country Victoria. They'll travel interstate to see him because they believe that he is on a mission to help them with their problem, right? And if anyone's ever been to a doctor who didn't listen to you and just prescribed something, I said, Brad, who didn't really listen to you and, wasn't very personal, we know that we don't recommend them. We don't, go back there. We might use the services because we have to, but they're not really going to get a lot of extra from us. Whereas somebody who you feel is on your side and championing your cause, which is a psychographic type of segmentation, we will go out of our way to promote. That's when they get multiple 5-star reviews, recommendations, testimonials, and tons of referrals. Okay, so how did we get there? Let me just tell you what we did for Dr. Dan. The first thing is he needs to be findable. Okay, that means when you go and you're looking for something. So he's a pain specialist. So you got pain. You're looking for a specialist. How do you find him, right? Now, the normal way of finding people in Australia for since I've been around has been Google. Dominated search, got one of the highest dominances of Google in the world. So people would go to Google, right? And they'd type in their problems and they would come up with answers, which can be manipulated by paying for ads, okay? So if you want to go up on top of search, you can pay for prominence, and people do that a lot, and that kind of works, right? It's destination search. I've got a problem, here's a solution. Now, we know only 20% of people click on ads and 80% click on organic content, but those 20% still can be plentiful. And we do Google ads. I love destination marketing. I think it's great, right? Much better than meta marketing, where you're pushing out your message to people who actually don't want it. So, but think about this. The age of AI is when we start talking about how AI plays a part in our search. So when we got those results from Dan, I was like, where's this coming from? And we did a bit of investigation. Now, his website stats don't show tremendous results from AI. They show strong results. He's getting lots of referrals from AI, as in places like Perplexity and ChatGPT, literally sending him customers. However, when you go through and you think sensibly, common sense, when you go and replicate the searches and you come up with him number 1, which I did, it doesn't have links. There's no ads. There's no lead funnel, right? It's just content and recommendations. AI is telling you, oh, this is a good person based on reviews, website longevity, content, all the standard SEO stuff that would normally come up in Google, but people are not in Google. They're in ChatGPT, they're in Perplexity, they're in Claude. And when they're in there, you can't influence them. So ads just don't work. And what we're finding is our people who run ads as their primary way of getting business, which is normally people new to us or people who are transitioning to us, ads are going like this. Because people, if they're not on Google and they're not on Meta, they're not seeing your ads, mate. But they're in, I think it was something like 40% of people go AI first when they're doing a search now. That means they're not going to see your ads, right? And there'll be ads there maybe eventually, but there's not right now. So the thing about Dr. Dan is he's produced content for 5 years. Where does AI get their content from? From the internet, right? It's the content he's produced in high quality, in good volume, over time, in longevity, is now producing exponential results because he's unique. Other doctors won't do it. other doctors won't bother to produce content. They're just relying on the marketing team to do some ads. So that's why he's winning. And the clients we have in this space, even our logistics client, is starting to see remarkable results from the content they're producing for the last 2.5 years. So we're finding this over and over again with our clients, is they're getting lots more referrals. We've got a financial services client. The amount of referrals he's getting is remarkable now that we've been working with him for the last year, right? And he tried everything. He's tried ads, he's tried this, he's tried that. But what he wasn't doing is just consistently and reliably producing high quality content that people actually want to read, which is exactly what AI looks at. AI is far more discerning than Google or Meta in what they choose to promote. So we need to be aware of that. So you've got to be findable, but that's only the first bit, right? Findable is the first level. Then when they go onto AI, there's no buttons. It's not an ad. What they do is they go, oh, so if you Google, best pain specialist in Melbourne, you come up with Metro Pain, which is where Dan Bates, go. And if you just look at Metro Pain, and they probably go to Google after that, first picture is Dan in the operating theatre, right? You can scroll down, find the phone number, find the email address, and you'll find your way to Dan. So that's the process. So we have to think about our statistics and our measurement a little bit differently. But when they do that and they go through, so say they went to Metro Pain, which is an old company. We did his branding, we took photos, we did video, we did, a lot of copy, and he's got tremendous amounts of reviews. I think they had something like, 400, 4.8 star reviews or something like that. So a lot of reviews, which gave it volume, but also a high score. So there's credibility, right? The problem with ads is if it's just an ad and it doesn't go anywhere interesting, there's no destination, you lose the credibility and you lose your referral, okay? You only get one chance, right? People don't know how many referrals they've lost because people go to their website and it's out of date. They go to their LinkedIn profile, which is normally the #1 search result for someone's name, which is referrals, 80% in people's names, not the business name. And people go there and there's an outdated LinkedIn profile and there's no content, doesn't even have their right phone number, there's no website link, there's no content, there's nothing for them to see, right? You lose credibility. I can't tell you how many marketing and LinkedIn experts I Google, I go to their LinkedIn profile and it's completely out of date and not showing any content. I'm like, oh, you gotta live your own brand, right? So for these people, how could it be a pain expert if he's not showing expertise in pain? Where's his IP? He can just tell people he is, but how does he prove it, right? So credible is the next step. Then you've got to be accessible. Okay, I've found Metro. Great, there's Dan. How do I get in touch? What's the process? What does he do? How do I, access his service? Do I call them? Do I email? Do I fill in a form? Is there, a way to go down his funnel? We need to have that to make it easy. And it's not just, oh, I saw your website, I'm going to call and make an appointment, right? I mean, Dan gets a lot of that. But in a lot of cases, people need to form more trust. Is there a podcast? Is there an ebook I can download? Is there a webinar that I can get a bit more information? Is there an event that I can go and sit with others so it's not so confrontational? What's the pathway from I found you and you look good, but I'm not quite sure? And when we've built these steps in, it makes a remarkable difference. And I'll give you another case study. I like to use real live data. We had an accounting business that we run events for, and we ran an event, and there's a lot of pushback from running an event with 40 people to running a boardroom session before we book in one-on-ones. They're like, we don't need it. As soon as they hear our presentation, everyone will want to book in one-on-one. I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure. Generally, people need a bit more, brand of you in order to book in for the next step. And they kept pushing back, and I'm like, fine. I'll offer them both. I'll go a boardroom session or a one-on-one. There you go. I'm not always right. I like to test and use data. What's right is what the customer says, what the customer does, what's the action. Did we get the sale? Did we not? Ran the event, 40 people, 12 people booked in for the boardroom, was oversold, right? We had a waiting list. Nobody booked in for a one-on-one. We did the boardroom session. Then we had 5 people booking for a one-on-one. Everyone bought the product, all of them, right? If we didn't do the middle step, we could have got none, right? Because we didn't have enough steps in the process for someone who isn't sure yet to go down and do more work. That's why this accessible part is so important. We call it middle of the funnel, okay? And the last one is profitability. Of course, we want to be profitable. Profitability comes from selling products. So once they get in front of you and they're like, Joe, you're the man, I really want to do, work with you, you're a marketing genius. How do we do it? Joe needs to have a range of products that's going to suit my particular needs, and they need to be organized. As in, there's generally 3, small, medium, and large, at least, in terms of services. A pre-product is a very good option. So what we like to do is start with this, and then we'll decide about these big products later, so people don't get sticker price shock, right? We love to have annuity products. So after you've been running your business for a while, after they've fulfilled the 3 products, there's something else they could buy that keeps them with us and keeps them communicating with us, right? So productization and product structure is so important to our profitability, right? If you're a social star client, you will come in, generally do a marketing plan. Some sort of planning session. Gets us to know you, you get to know us. We provide massive value for a low price as a first product. Then you might go on one of our retainers, or you might do a project. And in the end, you might decide you've done enough, we've done everything for you. You might go on a maintenance product, which is either our CRM, or you might go on to a services just with some advice, just to help you keep your brand alive. That's our product hierarchy, and so that works very well. So findable, credible, accessible, profitable. Now, how does that work with our e-traction sales funnel that I talked about before? Glad you asked. So these map beautifully to our sales methodology, which is cold, warm, hot, and sale. Okay, findable, credible, accessible, and profitable. Okay, so you can, when I say cold, warm, hot, sale, you kind of get it, right? Cold means those people are cold to you. Okay, now we've added we're always updating the model. We added Arctic here recently because more and more people are asking us to do paid ads, and then I can mathematically tell you from how many sales you want, how much money you need to spend on Meta or Google. Because I can just do the mathematics of closure rates and go, if you want 10 sales, in the hot zone, you need to be having 40 conversations with people about price, terms and conditions, etc. From there, you need 400 people in the warm zone actively engaging with your content, commenting, coming to your webinars, downloading your ebook, engage people. Out in the cold area, you need 4,000 people who you are touching base with. That means they're getting a newsletter. That means you're adding them on LinkedIn. That means you're talking to them or presenting in front of them. 4,000 to get to 10. If you go to Arctic and it's paid ads, that's 40,000. Depending on which sort of ad network you go with. Meta, 400,000 to get to 10. It's crazy, right? But if you think about it, if I was to fly over Melbourne in an aeroplane and throw out brochures and hope it lands on someone who wants my service, that's basically what meta advertising is. I know you can target people, but what are you targeting them based on, right? So those young people who have Instagram, how much content do you have in there about, what you do and what you're after for them to accurately predict that you need a certain service, right? Maybe your age, maybe you like a few things. It's not that reliable, okay? It's very broad. So what we do is we try and go with referrals where people who understand your brand more intimately through content will then spot a need for you. If you have an army of referrers, you'll never be out of work, okay? So that 10, you only need under 400. 400 army of referrers who are warm, who know your brand, creates 40 opportunities, which creates 10 deals. That's basically the maths. You don't need to bother about the rest of it if you're a high quality, low volume service professional. Sounds better, right? Okay. These are sort of things we can do. These are all of our services that we have that map to that. So we do a little funnel, as I said, we do sales, but I wanted to just sort of talk about specifically this warm zone because we can do SEO, AIO, LinkedIn outreach, etc. But this content is the starting point for all brands because it's the lowest hanging fruit. Most people don't know exactly what you do. If you just tell people, you'll be more likely to get more referrals. So I'm going to deep dive into our expert marketing system because I find it's the most valuable starting point for all of our clients. Okay, let me take you through this and some people may have different versions or flavors, but I'm going to tell you the perfect scenario of what I think works best for most people, of which you can modify slightly, but there's reasons for every single part. So I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes on this, okay? The first thing is a personal blog. Now, a personal blog is from your account. So generally we work in LinkedIn, so this is your LinkedIn account. It's your personal first-hand account of something to do with your business, and you're not selling, you're communicating value. Very important. You're not there to push a product, right? You're there to talk about your why. You're there to talk about how you help people, things that will be of high value to your audience. The reason is that there's a lot more people who want to follow you than buy your product, right? And we see that, you know, in terms of business accounts on LinkedIn or any social media and personal accounts, that's a tenfold, you know, attention level. So your personal brand will get 10 times more attention than a company brand. So people who only post on their company account, you're limiting yourself significantly to the amount of opportunities. And they might argue, oh, but all of those people aren't going to buy my products. And I go, that's okay. They can refer you to someone who can buy your product. And people, you know, think, oh, they're irrelevant, those people, because I don't know, it's my friend from high school. You don't know who your friend from high school's friends are. They could be, their uncle could be your perfect customer. Their son might just have joined an agency that is your perfect customer. You don't know, right? Your next recruit might come from one of your young people who've shared or liked or commented on your personal blog. So the personal blog is the one that will get the most attention. And Dr. Dan, we did this, we switched everything to we switched his emphasis to his personal blog when he started his new business, and his brand took off massively. That's why I've got such good results. So that's a personal blog. Then we followed up with a business blog, which we know will get less attention, right? And this particular blog is not designed to get reach. It's designed to go convert those people who may be potential clients into clients, right? It's more middle of the funnel, this business blog. And it's more about the business and the products, how you solve the problem that we've alluded to in the personal blog. They're related, but very different. In that one, you can have a link to the next step in the process. Download my this, join my this, etc., etc. I recently saw a personal blog from Dan Priestley. Dan Priestley, if you don't know him, he's been on a diary of the CEO a bazillion million times. He's got a massive brand. It's from a company called Dent, or they have a program called the Key Person of Influence. And so he has a very, very big brand. And he wrote tons of content on LinkedIn, wrote a personal blog. It was about something quite, you know, sad. It was about all these people being retrenched and, you know, how terrible it was and so forth. So it was a really interesting article. And then at the bottom was like, oh, by the way, join my business course. And he got this significant blowback from people going, that's really not cool, right? Don't sell on your personal blog. Just communicate and add value. In your business blog from your company, that is where you put that information, okay? And if people are interested, they will see that. You post that under your business account and you share it onto your personal account. That's how people see it, okay? You can also advertise against it and promote your post with paid boosting, which is what we do frequently. They're different styles, they're different energies, and they're done on purpose, and you need both. The other thing is that that people don't know about LinkedIn and about AI is that it picks up blogs or articles on LinkedIn more than anything else, okay? Your Google ad, your Meta ad, or your content, so your Instagram post, are invisible to Google and AI. They do not help in that. Yes, they help within the platform and they shouldn't be disregarded, but they're not going to help you in that AI search that is becoming the #1 place where people are getting information. That's why blogging is back in a big way. That's why we've always done it, but now we're going even harder. Now, there's various types of business blogs. One form to get into AI, if you want to get into, say, Perplexity, for like Dr. Dan, you'll write long form content, long, 2,000 words, and lots of links. If it looks like a research article, AI will rank it more highly. Your personal blog is not the same. It's about 750 words. It's personal, it's story driven, it's a narrative. More emotive, the better. Now, the reason why personal blogs stand out so much online and get cut through is because AI can't write Nat's personal journey of how she got to where she is today. It does not know. It doesn't know about what happened this morning in her life that she's reflecting on that could help other business owners in her space. okay? AI can't replicate that. AI can give you the top 10 reasons to do this. It can give you factual information that crawls from the internet, but it cannot give you the personalization of that. And so that's why personal blogs, A, get more traction on social media. So LinkedIn gives it more reach because it's organic and it's real. And also people want to read it. All of that leads into better social media presence and better SEO as well. So that's why these two things are so important. We call them high impact posts, 1 per week. That's all, 1 per week. We even have people doing 1 per fortnight. It still works, awesome. Okay, it'd be amazing how quickly a week comes around. I'm sure somebody always had that experience of clients going, oh my God, it's enough, 4 posts doesn't sound like a lot, but when you will go through the process, they come around real quick. Now, we don't ignore other social media platforms. This internal update is personalization from the company. We do a lot of our awards, new hires, people leaving, all that sort of stuff, and we post it in our personal update. It makes our company relatable. This is an internal company update. It builds the brand of my business away from me, which is the personal blog. That's why I like it. People get to know my team. Therefore, they're less dependent on me. If you don't have a team, that's okay. You could have contractors, you could have outsourcers, you could have customers, you could have partners. There's tons of things you can write about. And then you've got the industry update. This is your knowledge of the market, which makes you seem smart, and you're curating content for your customers and they find it valuable. Yes, it's things they could find on their own, but if you can curate it in a good way, they'll be appreciative of that. This presentation is essentially a curated industry update about what's happening in AI in the content space. It's my learning and experience, and we will post things like 3 sliders on LinkedIn. We can put that on Instagram, we can put that on Facebook, and we can boost it. And it makes people interested in what we do because they don't necessarily know me, but they might work in the industry that I am going to promote. All of these things are designed for a very specific purpose, and they work together in unison to give you a full 360-degree brand rather than just a one-dimensional, I just do LinkedIn posts, or I just do Instagram posts, or I just do blogs, or I just do videos, etc. Okay, all of them are important to work with the technology we have available, work with humans because they want to see a variety of things, and it brings people down the funnel. Okay, that's what our expert marketing system is entailed. Okay, so I'm just going to go a couple minutes over because we started a bit late. I did a test when I was away in the Philippines, and there's my friend from the Philippines right there, hello. I did an organic post. I wrote this based on my experience at Census. Now, that's my front door, and that's the phone book that I got delivered. I used to work at Census, that's relevant for me. That's the yellow and white pages, and next to it is an AI of the yellow pages because I don't have any anymore. So that's how I used AI. And so this blog that I wrote about how companies don't plan ahead, and I just talked about my experiences of working at Census, which no one else could know, got 7,500 impressions. It's not setting the world on fire, but that's not too bad. 100 people read the article, so they clicked into the blog, which means they're interested. Remember I talked about that cold to warm, they're now warm. 41 reactions, 20 comments. Not bad. Now, all of that came from 1 hour of work. Okay, 1 hour produced that. If I was going to spend money on ads, that would have cost me potentially $1,000 of ads, right? Now, then I did a fully AI entrepreneurial sort of case study, if you like, on the guy, Charles Goodyear, who invented rubber, which I found fascinating. And it got a few impressions and 0 interactions, right? LinkedIn did not promote it and people did not like it. So, and it's a different topic, but anybody could Google that. You could go to Wikipedia and read that. You could not go anywhere and read this, right? And a lot of the people who came out of the woods to comment on this were from Census. I could have written about IBM. I could have written about, Hewlett Packard. I could have written about many different things to lean into my network to promote what I do so that they come forward into my brand, e-traction. Okay, got to finish up. The bottom line is if you do ads, you're building something that doesn't last. As soon as you turn off the ads, you don't get value. If you build a brand through sold content, you're placing a brick down on the foundations of a house that you can live in forever. Dr. Dan could stop doing any marketing right now and you'd still got a year's worth of leads and referrals, but eventually it would erode, right? If everyone else is doing ads, if you stop today, the leads stop immediately, and we've seen that happen. Okay, so I'm going to skip over that. There's one thing Doc Dan did, which is doing physical outreach. Okay, it's not just digital. These are real people. We need to do real physical interactions to get digital impressions as well. So we do a lot of that sort of stuff. And one thing is that this is not just good for clients. This is how we attract talent for clients. We do a lot of talent acquisition, particularly in areas like accounting where it's very difficult to get staff, and also partnerships, which could be fundraising. This could be doing deals with people, partnerships to co-sell things, co-promote things. It attracts everyone, right? Which is much more valuable than, you know, just looking at sort of advertising. All right, now we're here for Bob. I've talked a bit about Social Star and I mentioned Campus Life. These three businesses work in unison to help our clients achieve their goals. If you're just being at Social Star, we have Campus Life students who work with you to provide economical ways of creating this content. If you're in Bob, we give you a Campus Life student to do that, and we provide the overview of the Social Star expertise and systems to help you grow your business or start your business. So we have three different businesses that will work synergistically together to help you do this content. Last thing, if you want to get a copy of my book, I would offer to post one out, but they're very expensive to post because it's heavy. It's about that thick. There's one over there I could show you. In fact, I will show you. Very professional. Here's one I prepared earlier. So this is my first book. Right? There's thickness there. That's my second book. Right? Very different. Right? So that costs $10 to post. That costs $20 to post. So feel free to have a digital copy of my book, which is zero posting, keeping our costs down. So, and obviously you can buy a printed copy if you like, but grab this QR code, get a free copy of our ebook. Yes, you go into our funnel, but we only provide valuable information from there, things like this webinar and other things we offer for free. If you want to use us, then you'll come to us. That's our e-traction philosophy. That's what we do. We live our own brand as we do for our clients. So I hope you found that valuable. I hope you found that interesting. I know we're 4 minutes over. We start 4 minutes late. I'll finish on time now. If you do have any questions, we have run out of time. What I'd like you to do is to share them on either our LinkedIn, or you can send me a direct message if you have my details. I'm more than happy to take questions, comments, or have a follow-up call if you want to do that, or reach out to my team, who's some of you here today. So thanks for coming. Thanks to all the people who are watching this later. I know we had tons of registrations from people from overseas and so forth. Time zone isn't always friendly for people in different world. Thank you for your time and attention, and we hope to see you on the next webinar. See you, everyone. Oh, I'll still got my first book. That's what I love. Got to get my second book now. See you, everybody. Thanks, team.